Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim, and these are the headlines on the continent. Guinea-Bissau's new prime minister resigns amid mounting international pressure on President Jose Mario Vaz. Vaz is locked in a political standoff after he sacked the previous government just weeks ahead of elections. The president of Benin, Patrice Talon, tells France 24 that West African nations want to pull their reserves of the CFA-Franc from France. And modern art, design and Africa intersect right here in Paris. We'll talk to photographer Prince Gyasi later on in the programme. But first, the new Prime Minister of Guinea-Bissau has quit amid international pressure. President Jose Mario Vaz named Faustino Imbali Premier after sacking his entire cabinet last week. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, is holding a special summit after telling Vaz on Wednesday he had 48 hours to quit or face sanctions. But despite the crisis, campaigning for the November 24th presidential election is in full swing. Our correspondent Sarah Sacco has more.
On the campaign trail in Pradi, a village west of the capital city Bissau, this opposition party leader is announcing tough measures he plans to implement if elected.
Le pays en panne, madame. Le pays en panne.
Pourquoi vous avez emballé?
Ça, c'est pour nettoyer tous les bandits. Et les faux et les trafics de drogue seront retournés en Colombie et à l'Amérique latine. C'est pour cela. Viva!
Campaign promises that the villagers hope become a reality.
Importante para nós, porque nós somos fartos de crise de que não passa na terra. Trabalho que tem, escola que tem.
A lot is riding on this presidential election, bringing stability back to a country after years of political turmoil between the president and the party that excluded him, the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. The party, which has its own candidate in the running, Domingos Pereira, is in conflict with the presidential office after it dismissed its prime minister.
Tentou golpe de Estado, só que os seus parceiros não o recuaram. Alguns fantoches aceitaram ser membros do governo, porque também sabiam que não tinham condições para ser membros do governo.
It hasn't stopped outgoing President Jose Mario Vaz from running as an independent candidate and campaigning despite the tense political climate.
O mês terra está no novo mundo. Se não me estiver terra desenvolvido, está no novo mundo.
In the capital city, a number of voters say they're tired of this umpteenth political crisis.
Nkala vota ni nkatene na kitempo prop nya tempo mane kuboja ngongele mpega nya laba pangocha nya 25 francs mpoi na nya fugon que nya famílias
E políticos tá queria ser confusão, seguinte, mesmo que terra por ir andar para diante um bocadinho e tá acabar para riba para trás.
12 candidates are in the running in the upcoming presidential elections on November 24th.
Moving on now, and Benin's president has announced that the West African Monetary Union wants to take back control of its currency. Patrice Talon told France 24 that the bloc would pull its reserves of the CFA-Franc from France. Talon said psychological reasons and questions of sovereignty prompted the decision. 155 million people on the continent use the currency, which has for decades been a source of controversy. Pierre Delrieux explains.
It's the first time a head of state publicly announces the withdrawal of foreign reserves of the West African CFA from France. In an interview with RFI and France 24, Benin's president Patrice Talon said the move was unanimous for all the countries concerned.
We all unanimously agree that this model needs to end. The Central Bank of the West African Monetary Union will manage all of the currency reserves and will dispatch them to the different partner central banks around the world.
The CFA-Franc was created in 1945 following the Bretton Woods Agreement and is used in 14 African countries divided into 2 monetary unions. In total, 155 million people use the CFA-Franc on the continent. Initially, the term CFA was short for the French colonies of Africa. Today, the acronym means African Financial Community. The CFA-Franc is tied to the euro, meaning it follows the European currency's fluctuations. a controversial situation seen by many against the CFA-Franc as neo-colonial. Earlier in October, the French finance minister Bruno Le Maire stated that France was open to a reform of the CFA-Franc.
The French president is ready to support an ambitious reform of the CFA-Franc zone. But the member states must be the ones to initiate this. They must make proposals and measure how far they're willing to go.
For years, anti-CFA-Franc movements across Western Africa have demanded the right for former French colonies to manage their own national currencies. The separation with the euro officially started this year after the creation of the ECO was announced, an official West African currency designed to replace the CFA-Franc by 2020.
Well, let's turn now to legislative elections in Mauritius. An incumbent Prime Minister Pravin Jugnauth has claimed victory, and his centre-right party is expected to win an outright majority in parliament. Jugnauth had been dogged by calls of nepotism after taking the top job from his father in 2017. But the 57-year-old pointed to his social reforms, including the introduction of a minimum wage and increased pensions. Thursday's vote had been dominated by calls for economic equality in one of Africa's wealthiest countries. And finally, today marks the first day of the AKAA, also known as Africa Art and Design Fair. It's happening right here in Paris, and for its 4th edition, it's invited artists whose works are linked to the African continent. The event features 44 exhibitors and more than 100 artists, most of them from Africa. Our guest tonight is Ghanaian artist Prince Gyasi, also known as Africa, of course, is happening right now.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about how you actually got started in your career.
So I studied art in high school, and as a young boy, what I was doing was trying to experiment on how to create graphic art. In terms of creating products with alternatives, because I was using Microsoft Word instead of CorelDRAW at that time when I was young, like 7 years old. So I've been on the PC like the whole time, not going out, not doing anything apart from playing football. That's what I do. So then it built my art in terms of finding alternatives and giving power to the youth and giving power to people who feel like I don't have money to afford equipment right now, but what can I do? I have to use what I have. So I started with the iPhone, and gradually it just evolved and I started doing something serious and telling real stories from Africa, which is Ghana, to be specific.
And what inspired you exactly? What, you took, I suppose, inspiration from your hometown, Accra.
Yeah.
But, what did you look for in subject matter?
Yeah, so my mom grew up around Jamestown, and she dropped out of school, and she sold stuff for her little brother to go to school. And I noticed that education has been the major problem for people in that town, that small little town called Jamestown, and they were being neglected, and these kids are indulging in fishing every time and they don't make it to school. So what my mom did was, when she made some money, she went back there to give out like gifts, like material stuff like books and clothes and shoes. And I told her in 2015 that if I ever make any means, I'm gonna put these kids into school. And she thought I was kidding. And 2017, I started noticing that I can actually create a system that can push these kids into school, like create a solution for these kids.
And what was that solution? Tell us more about it.
So we created like a organization called Baskets, me and my partner Kukwa. We created an organization called Baskets, and what we're doing is, Baskets simply means like kids trapped in a situation they can come out of. And I thought, okay, if these kids think like they're trapped in a negative situation, what can we do? We can transform the same negativity into positive. So if I want to give you a gift, I pass it up. So I think these kids can be repackaged and passed it as a gift to the world. So what we're doing is we're just helping them creatively and putting them into school with the means of the money that I make from my art, like percentage of it. So we started putting kids to school. Like this little boy called Joseph. I'm going to put him in school next week as soon as I get back to Ghana. And that's what I've been doing, and that's the purpose, and telling the real stories from where my mom came from. Going back there and giving back, yeah.
So finding a real purpose,
in
art,
yeah,
is sort of your credo, I suppose.
Yeah, and also trying to help to heal people who are fighting mental health issues. Because usually when you tell someone I'm doing color therapy and I think it's going to help you, they're so conscious about it, and they they think so much about it and say, hey, is it gonna work? So what I do is I use hidden elements because I have a condition called synesthesia, and I associate color with the days of the week, alphabets, and names of people. And I've had this since I was a kid, and it's only my mom and a teacher, my grade 5 teacher, who knew about this. And I thought it was a joke. And when I grew up, I realized it was a condition that a lot of people have, like Pharrell, and Pharrell sees music. I met someone in Oxford University who also sees color in the days of the week, and I was on the stage and I said Thursday is grey, and she fought with me, and she met me, she said Thursday is pink, and I just realized a lot of people have that. So like to me, like Monday is brown, Tuesday is orange, Wednesday is blue, Thursday is grey, Friday is red, Saturday is white, Sunday is green. And then I find symbolisms with color. So like orange comes with agency and alertness and all of that. So that has shaped my art, and then it's giving meaning to my art, and also like helping people mentally, stimulating their mindset and everything. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, this is great to hear, but there is just one question. I mean, we're almost out of time, but I do have to ask it.
Yeah.
You know, there are people on Instagram who all have smartphones.
Yeah.
Can anyone these days become an artist? Yes or no?
So for me, I have an art background. I studied art in high school. I was doing sculpture. You have to go through the processes. I was doing sculpture, I was doing graphic design. And for me, I thought, when I was in school, I went to Accra Academy School, and it's one of the best schools in Ghana. Not money-wise, but yeah, affordable, but one of the best schools. You have to actually go through an examination to get there. And what I did was I was thinking my teachers were stressing me out because they said, okay, there's a course called graphic design. And usually, you know, graphic design goes with a PC. But we were not using a PC. We were actually doing it with our hands. We were painting on canvas. So if you're asked to paint a calendar, you're asked to design a calendar, you have to paint it. And I didn't know what I was doing at that time, but then it actually shaped me. So it took me through that process of doing hard work, and now just going on the PC and using the phone and everything. Is
so education has
and it has to do with your mind and not the tool, because usually people are thinking about the tool and thinking if they just share on Instagram, that's it. But then I feel like if you have a real story to tell in a more artistic way, it's going to help you. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to leave it there because my producer is in my ear shouting at me saying this. But thank you very much for being with us here on France 24.
Yeah,
thank you, Prince.
Appreciate it.
And that's it from us. There's more news coming up very shortly. Stay tuned.